In 1946, a man with $40 million arrived in the Nevada desert, and Las Vegas was never the same. He was Meyer Lansky, a 5'4" Jewish immigrant who escaped Russian pogroms as a child. The camera pans over dim lighting as this unassuming figure sits silently, calculating millions that would transform barren sand into gold. The FBI called him the most dangerous financial mind in organized crime. This is how a diminutive outsider built Las Vegas from nothing, forever altering America's landscape of entertainment and wealth. The crowded tenements of New York's Lower East Side became young Meyer Lansky's new home in 1911. Like thousands of other Jewish families, they had crossed an ocean seeking refuge from persecution, entering a world where fire escapes zigzagged across brick facades like metal vines, and multiple languages echoed through narrow streets. Despite barely speaking English, Lansky adapted quickly to his surroundings, observing everything with calculating precision. The boy who would become one of America's most influential crime figures displayed extraordinary intellectual abilities from the start. Advancing from 1st to 6th grade in just 3 years, Lansky demonstrated an exceptional aptitude for mathematics and processed complex information with unusual speed. These early lessons in probability and risk calculation would later become the cornerstone of an empire where numbers proved more powerful than bullets. While other immigrant children saw only excitement in the street gamblers' games, Lansky perceived the mathematical frameworks beneath the surface. He studied the subtle relationships between probability and reward, a hidden language that most adults never deciphered. In the cramped streets where immigrants struggled to survive, Lansky discovered a different path to power through mathematical certainty. By age 15, Lansky worked at a tool and die shop, earning 10 cents per hour. The tedious factory work contrasted sharply with his active mind, which continuously calculated odds and possibilities. After hours, he implemented these principles in small street gambling operations that yielded more in a single night than a week's factory wages. When Prohibition arrived in 1920, the demand for bootlegged spirits created unprecedented opportunity. While others focused on distribution, Lansky applied his mathematical prowess to the financial architecture of crime. He developed distribution networks, calculated optimal pricing structures, and created methods to launder profits through legitimate businesses, performing complex financial calculations entirely in his head and leaving minimal evidence. His partners provided necessary muscle, but Lansky's financial systems transformed their operation from street gang to criminal corporation. While flamboyant gangsters like Al Capone made headlines with violent exploits, Lansky operated behind the scenes, creating financial systems that multiplied illegal profits while minimizing legal exposure. His innovations in money laundering were so sophisticated that modern financial regulations were eventually created specifically to counter methods he pioneered. As Prohibition's end approached in 1933, panic spread through criminal organizations dependent on illegal alcohol. Most scrambled to establish new rackets in gambling, prostitution, or labor racketeering. But Lansky had prepared years in advance. Where others saw crisis, he recognized opportunity, particularly in the emerging potential of legalized gambling. While Al Capone's face graced newspaper front pages across America, Meyer Lansky crafted something far more valuable than notoriety: financial invisibility. The federal government knew exactly who he was, yet couldn't touch him. Despite tracking his movements for decades, they never managed to make a single serious charge stick. Lansky had mastered the ultimate criminal superpower, being visible to authorities while remaining legally untouchable. By the 1930s, Lansky had established himself as organized crime's financial architect. His genius lay in transforming blood money into legitimate wealth through a labyrinth of investments so complex that government accountants couldn't follow the trail. When other criminals saw dollar bills, Lansky saw financial structures, shell companies, and international banking connections. The techniques Lansky pioneered in the 1930s became the template for modern money laundering, decades before the term existed. His sophisticated financial instruments eventually forced governments worldwide to create entirely new regulatory frameworks to combat them. In one notable scheme, Lansky funneled gambling profits through a chain of laundromats in Miami, where cash businesses made perfect covers as legitimate income sources blended seamlessly with illegal earnings. Lansky understood offshore banking when most Americans had never traveled overseas. Behind the unassuming title, the mob's accountant, operated perhaps the most sophisticated financial criminal of the 20th century. The nickname drastically undersold his true position as the strategic mastermind who transformed loosely connected criminal ventures into an organized corporate structure spanning continents. Lansky wasn't manipulating numbers. He was rewriting the entire financial playbook of organized crime. He lived in a modest home, dressed in unremarkable suits, and kept no financial records. This unassuming lifestyle served as calculated strategy. By avoiding the flashy trappings of wealth that attracted federal attention, Lansky maintained a cover of middle-class respectability that helped shield him from prosecution. His financial discipline extended beyond personal habits into rigid business practices. Every transaction had layers of protection. Every dollar had a plausible origin story, and every business connection maintained a veneer of legitimacy. The 1929 Atlantic City Conference marked a turning point for American organized crime, and Lansky was at its center. In an oceanfront hotel room, he helped establish the framework for how crime families would divide territories and settle disputes. This meeting united various ethnic factions within organized crime, transcending old rivalries between Italian, Jewish, Irish, and other criminal groups. Lansky understood that sustainable criminal profit required stability and cooperation. Under this new structure, disputes between families would be mediated rather than erupting into bloody street wars that attracted police attention. Lansky's vision transformed organized crime from neighborhood protection rackets into a sophisticated national enterprise with political influence reaching from city halls to Washington, D.C. He cultivated relationships with judges, police officials, and politicians, creating a protective buffer of corrupted authorities who would look the other way. These connections were built on mutual financial interest, another hallmark of Lansky's business-first approach to crime. The same federal agents who had spent years searching for evidence to put Meyer Lansky behind bars found themselves in an unprecedented position in 1941. As German U-boats prowled America's eastern seaboard, sinking over 100 Allied vessels, naval intelligence officers approached their longtime adversary with an unusual proposition. They needed the criminal mastermind's help to protect the nation. Amid the chaos of war, the impossible happened. America's government turned to its most elusive criminal for protection. For Lansky, a Jewish immigrant who had escaped the violent pogroms of Tsarist Russia, fascism represented a deeply personal threat. The government that couldn't find enough evidence to convict him now sought his expertise to defend the country from the same hatreds he had fled as a child. The waterfront docks of New York represented a critical vulnerability in America's defense. German agents could easily infiltrate these bustling hubs of maritime commerce, potentially sabotaging crucial supply lines. Traditional surveillance methods proved inadequate for the task, but Lansky's street-level network promised what official channels could not deliver. Lansky approached this patriotic duty with remarkable efficiency. He mobilized an army of informants, dock workers, union members, bartenders, and shopkeepers, creating a counterintelligence operation that functioned entirely outside official channels. These civilian observers reported suspicious activities directly through Lansky's criminal hierarchy, a system more effective than any government agency could establish on short notice. While other mobsters saw only profit motives, Lansky recognized the existential danger Nazi ideology posed to Jews worldwide. His wartime activities revealed dimensions of his character that transcended his criminal enterprises, a complex blend of self-interest, community protection, and genuine patriotism for his adopted homeland. The cooperation between American intelligence and Lansky's organization remained largely classified for decades. Official histories minimized the role of organized crime in wartime security efforts. Yet in counterintelligence, these criminal networks provided critical human intelligence that formal agencies couldn't duplicate. Naval intelligence officers found themselves depending on men they had previously tried to imprison. Lansky's operations proved remarkably disciplined and effective. The mathematical precision he brought to illegal gambling translated effectively to counterintelligence work. Lansky's assistance came with an unstated price. His cooperation positioned him to negotiate for Luciano's early release once the war ended. In 1946, the state of New York commuted Luciano's sentence, acknowledging his contribution to the war effort, and deported him to Italy. With his powerful ally removed from American soil but still connected through their decades-long partnership, Lansky gained greater freedom to pursue new ventures. While Luciano boarded a ship to Italy, Meyer Lansky turned his attention to a barren stretch of Nevada desert that would soon transform American gambling forever. In early 1946, $6 million of mob money poured into what was then little more than a dusty railroad stop. This unprecedented investment aimed to create a luxury destination that would legitimize gambling and generate massive profits. But behind the glamorous vision lurked a dangerous mathematical problem that even Lansky couldn't solve. The visionary behind this desert gamble was Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, Lansky's volatile childhood friend. Siegel became the flamboyant public face of the project, while Lansky orchestrated the complex financing network behind the scenes. He convinced crime families from across the country to invest in this desert dream, leveraging his reputation for financial brilliance to secure their commitment. As construction progressed, alarming reports reached Lansky. The initial $1 million budget had ballooned to $6 million with inadequate explanation. Like a sandcastle built too close to the tide, the Flamingos' foundations began to crumble under financial pressure. Investors grew increasingly suspicious that Siegel was skimming funds, a cardinal sin in the mob's unwritten code. The mathematical precision that guided Lansky's entire criminal career revealed troubling inconsistencies in his friend's financial reports. In late 1946, mob leaders gathered at the now infamous Havana Conference. As crime bosses demanded retribution, Lansky found himself torn between loyalty to his lifelong friend and his responsibility to the organization. Using his considerable influence, Lansky convinced the others to give Siegel more time, essentially placing his own reputation on the line. The Flamingos' opening night in December 1946 was a catastrophe. Bad weather and poor planning kept high-rolling guests away. The casino hemorrhaged money, creating a devastating first impression that intensified investors' suspicions. Though Siegel scrambled to correct course in subsequent months, the damage was already done. The mathematical reality that Lansky understood so well, that casinos inevitably profit when properly managed, hadn't materialized. Every year, $5 million disappeared like a mirage from the Flamingo alone, a calculated vanishing act that left authorities chasing shadows. With Siegel's death clearing the path, Lansky perfected a financial sleight of hand that would mystify authorities for decades. What tourists saw as glamour and glitz was actually an elaborate mathematical trap designed by a man whose name appeared nowhere in the official records. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, Las Vegas transformed from a dusty outpost into an oasis of neon and opportunity. Behind this transformation stood Meyer Lansky, the invisible architect whose influence permeated every aspect of the casino business without leaving a single traceable connection. FBI agents tracking his movements found themselves pursuing a phantom. Lansky controlled vast casino interests, without appearing on a single casino license, deed, or corporate filing. The core of Lansky's system was the skim. Before casino earnings reached the official counting rooms where taxable revenue was recorded, predetermined amounts were diverted to mob interests across the country. The mechanics functioned like a parallel accounting system. Cash was counted twice, once unofficially to extract the skim, and once officially for the record books. This ensured casinos reported reasonable profits to satisfy tax authorities, while millions flowed tax-free to crime families through channels that left no paper trail. Lansky's operation resembled a Swiss watch, complex inner workings concealed beneath a conventional exterior. His system required intimate knowledge of accounting practices, tax regulations, and operational costs. The precision of counting room manipulations meant diverted cash might as well have evaporated in the desert heat for all the evidence it left behind. What distinguished Lansky's Las Vegas operation was its collaborative structure. Traditional organized crime divided territories along ethnic lines, but Las Vegas represented something unprecedented, a shared enterprise uniting formerly rival crime families. Under Lansky's financial stewardship, old enemies became business partners in a venture too profitable to disrupt with traditional mob rivalries. Financing for this desert empire came through seemingly legitimate channels. The Teamsters Union Central States Pension Fund, under the influence of Lansky's associate Jimmy Hoffa, became a critical source of development capital. These loans built casinos that would eventually skim millions back to the same criminal organizations that arranged the financing. This circular flow, from criminal activities to legitimate loans to casino profits and back to criminal organizations, represented money laundering at an industrial scale. While Las Vegas secured Lansky's legacy as a financial mastermind, his vision reached far beyond American borders. By 1960, as FBI surveillance teams documented his every move on American soil, Lansky orchestrated something far more ambitious. A gambling paradise just 90 miles from Florida's shores where American authorities couldn't touch him. Cuba became the crown jewel in Lansky's international operation, perhaps his most promising yet most dangerous venture. There, he cultivated a relationship with dictator Fulgencio Batista that granted him unprecedented operational freedom. Batista provided protection, tax exemptions, and financial assistance for casino developments. In exchange, Lansky delivered a steady stream of tourist dollars and private financial incentives to the dictator himself. This partnership transformed Havana into a playground for America's wealthy elite. Politicians, celebrities, and high rollers flocked to Lansky's Cuban establishments, enjoying luxury that surpassed even Las Vegas standards. The Havana Riviera, an $18 million investment that overshadowed anything on the Vegas Strip at that time, became his flagship property, featuring high-end gaming tables and world-class entertainment that attracted thousands of wealthy tourists. The Cuban catastrophe would have destroyed a lesser businessman, but Lansky had prepared contingencies. Even as his Havana empire fell, he established new casino interests in the Bahamas and London. These operations featured complex ownership structures, webs of shell companies and nominee shareholders that made his Las Vegas arrangements seem transparent by comparison. Financial adaptation became Lansky's trademark as authorities increased pressure throughout the 1960s. He pioneered Swiss banking relationships, moving substantial assets to numbered accounts beyond American tax authorities' reach. These offshore repositories grew increasingly important as law enforcement agencies dismantled his domestic operations. The brilliance of Lansky's approach was his fundamental understanding of gambling mathematics. While other criminals relied on force or theft for profits, Lansky built a business model around a statistical certainty. In games of chance played long enough, the house will always win. This insight allowed him to operate casinos that functioned simultaneously as legitimate businesses and efficient money laundering operations. At 68, Meyer Lansky made his boldest move yet, disrupting his pristine web of financial cover-ups in a desperate bid to escape American justice. In 1970, facing mounting federal pressure and tax evasion charges, Lansky abandoned his carefully constructed network of shell companies and offshore accounts and fled to Israel. The master criminal who had evaded American justice for decades was attempting his most audacious escape. Lansky's strategy hinged on Israel's law of return, which grants citizenship to any Jew seeking to immigrate to their ancestral homeland. For the man who had once organized Jewish gangsters against Nazi sympathizers, this seemed a fitting sanctuary. Yet his arrival created an unprecedented dilemma for Israeli authorities. Should the Jewish state offer protection to a man who had built an empire on vice simply because of his heritage? The answer came swiftly. After contentious deliberations reaching the highest levels of government, Israel's Supreme Court rejected Lansky's citizenship application. Their ruling was unambiguous. His criminal reputation made him unwelcome, regardless of his Jewish background. The nation that had welcomed countless Jewish refugees drew a line at harboring America's most sophisticated financial criminal. Rejected by his ancestral homeland, Lansky returned to American soil, facing the very charges he had fled. The irony was palpable. The man who had orchestrated countless escapes for his money couldn't secure one for himself. Federal prosecutors believed they finally had the evidence to convict him of tax evasion and his alleged skimming operation at the Flamingo. In the courtroom, Lansky demonstrated why he had remained virtually untouchable. His meticulous approach, minimal paper trails and plausible deniability, left prosecutors struggling to connect him directly to any criminal activity. His declining health also influenced judges, who showed reluctance to imprison an elderly man with various medical conditions. The government's cases collapsed, and Lansky walked free. The most persistent mystery surrounding Lansky remains his fortune. FBI investigators estimated his personal wealth at approximately $300 million, billions in today's currency. Yet when he died of lung cancer in 1983, his estate valued at just $57,000 stunned authorities. The vast fortune that had funded casinos across the globe had seemingly vanished. Two theories explain this disappearance. Some believe Lansky genuinely lost his wealth through the Cuban Revolution, failed investments, and enormous legal fees. According to this view, the master financial criminal simply ran out of luck. Others maintain that Lansky executed one final masterstroke, concealing his wealth in overseas accounts so sophisticated that authorities never located them. This would represent the ultimate victory for the pioneer of modern money laundering techniques. Despite his outsized influence on American criminal enterprise and Las Vegas development, Lansky's final years passed in relative obscurity. The mastermind who had once controlled a global gambling empire died in a modest Miami Beach apartment, far from the glittering casinos he helped create. For a man who had cultivated anonymity as a survival strategy, this quiet end seemed oddly appropriate. In the end, what made Meyer Lansky truly remarkable was his operational style. From his early bootlegging days to sophisticated casino innovations, he demonstrated financial genius through mathematical precision. While other mobsters made headlines with violent exploits, Lansky's invisibility became his strength. By preferring financial manipulation over physical intimidation, he built Las Vegas while staying off law enforcement's radar. History remembers this unassuming figure who transformed American entertainment forever. His unique blend of business acumen and criminal ingenuity allowed him to understand America's appetite for risk better than most legitimate businessmen of his era. If Lansky's shadowy empire intrigued you, like the video and don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell for more tales of the invisible figures whose influence shaped modern America. Until next time.